Hey Racer fans, Robin Miller, thanks for joining us for our weekly look back at racing history, and right now we're going to continue with our Tough Guy series, and nobody's tougher than the man I have on my shirt right here, James Ernest Hurtubise, Hercules Hurtubise. This is Jim in 1960. When a lot of us first heard of him, he almost went 150 miles an hour at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He broke Eddie Sack's pole speed by almost 3 miles an hour that year. Then I started following religiously. Places like Terre Haute. Here he is in Sterling Plumbing's Chevy. He won 4 races in a row, battling with Parnelli and Foyt and McCluskey and the boys up on the cushion at Terre Haute. Followed him all around the Midwest, when you could do that back then. And he was one of the 4 toughest guys. Parnelli said it's the bravest guy I ever raced against, but he was with Foyt and Roger Ward and Parnelli and Herk. Those were the 4 best guys, pavement or dirt, in the early 60s. But Jim never had the greatest equipment. I mean, he had good equipment, but not the best necessarily, because here's a good example. 1963, he's one of the hottest drivers, but he ends up driving Andy Granatelli's Novi. Puts it in the front row, leads the first lap at Indy, one of the loudest cheers you'll ever hear. He passed Parnelli, his buddy, for the lead, takes the lead, and they duel for a few laps, and then the thing breaks. So, Herc was pretty stubborn, and he was pretty strong-willed, so him and his brother Pete Hurtubise, in 1964, in the winter, they built their own roadster, the Tombstone Life Special, and they made Indy with it, ran pretty good, dropped out with an oil leak, and here he is in the Tombstone Life Special at Milwaukee, just after Indy. Milwaukee, 1964, June of 64. Roger Ward's on the pole, Roger Ward's on the pole in A.J. Watson's rear engine car. A.J. Foyt's in his roadster, they won Indy, and there's Herc. They run 1, 2, 3, strung together the first 50 laps. They're never. This is how they ran the first 50 laps. Well, Ward breaks. A.J. swerves to miss him. Jim runs over Foyt's car, hits the wall, knocks him out. 75 gallons of fuel bursts are ignited, and Jim is basically laying in this fire. Well, it burned the tip of his nose and his neck and his face and his arms and his legs, but it completely just turned his hands into charcoal. Burned a couple fingers off. Well, he almost died. He's in intensive care for a week, or a week or two. He finally gets out of intensive care, and he starts this long rehabilitation process. 9 months of skin grafts and trying to, he loses 30, 35 pounds in the hospital. But the most amazing thing was, like I said, his hands were just charcoal. They were just these horrible looking claws, basically. And he was told by the doctors, you got a choice. Your hands are going to be permanently one way or the other, straight or this. Well, Herc's like, I'm going to drive again. And they're like, yeah, right. No, I'm going to drive a race car again. So they put steel wires in his fingers, and his hands for the rest of his life are shaped like this so he can drive a race car again. And 9 months after his crash in Milwaukee, he's in a rear engine car that him and his brother have put together, Ted Hallebrand Shrike, at Phoenix. He finishes 4th in the Phoenix 150 and gets this amazing ovation. Herc was always one of the crowd favorites based on what happened in 1960, and here he was making this amazing comeback, and his hands are these bloody stubs at the end of the race, but he can still clutch his beer with his little claw, and he's drinking his beer, and he's got his son Andy on his shoulders, and all is right with the world because Herc's back. Well, he makes the Indy 500 in the Novi again after his rear engine car has a throttle stick and he crashes, and from that point on, he won the Atlanta NASCAR race, and he ran good in the USAC Stock Car Series, and he had some rear engine cars that he did okay, but they weren't the best cars necessarily. So in 1967, him and his brother Pete, and here's before I get to that, here's Jim. Here's a picture of his hand. You can just see there's just nothing hardly left of his left hand. Here it is again. What was left? These hands are just shaped like claws, and there's a good picture of them right here. Is how it looks. So in 1967. Him and Pete go in the barn in North Tonawanda, New York, their hometown, and they build a roadster called the Mallard. They don't make the race in 67, but they come back in 68, and despite the fact that I was on the team as an unpaid stooge and had to be fired because I was so stupid, that's me helping push my hero to the grid right there, Herc qualifies. He qualifies for the 1968 Indy 500. He's the only roadster in the field. He's the last front engine car to ever make the Indy 500, which goes to show you, not only was he brave, he was damn good too. I remember showing Dario pictures of this car, and Dario was like, I can't believe he's competing against all those rear engine cars driving this thing. So, as time goes on, Jim makes the race in 72 driving a rear engine car, but he didn't like rear engine cars. He didn't like the politics of racing. He kind of had a big fight with Goodyear for a while. He didn't like the fact that racing was becoming so expensive. And he just you know, he never became a champion, and he didn't win the Indy 500, and he had all this immense popularity because he was so brave and so talented and so tough, but you know, his career didn't work out like it should have. But he still had this great sense of humor and this great spirit, and people always loved talking to Herc. As time goes on and people look back at this, you know, they might remember that in 1978, you know, he ran out on the track during qualifying to protest getting screwed by USAC, which he did because he wasn't allowed to qualify because they said he didn't have a final inspection sticker. Well, that was crap. There was no bulletin for that. So he was really right, and he protested it. So here's a guy that the people cheered for years at Indy that risked his life, that came back from the dead, and it was kind of sad he's let off the grounds by the police, and the whole thing just, it really left a bad taste for you, when you, especially if you're a Hurtubise fan, because you saw what this guy had gone through and how his Indy 500 career ended. But if you saw him in the 60s, and you saw him make his comeback, and you got to know him just a little bit, then you always had to just have a special place for him because there was nobody like him. He had one of the great laughs of all time. He was one of the bravest race drivers of all time, one of the toughest race drivers of all time, and I'm just proud I got to work for him, I got to know him, I got to cover him, I got to know his family, and I got to be around to watch him run the cushion at Terre Haute, because there was only one James Ernest Hurtubise, and he was a hell of a man. This is Robin Miller. Thanks for watching RACER.com.